Welcome to Neurodivergency, where neurodivergent voices and friends turn struggle into strength. We're here to break the stigma, dive into
Stigma.
truth, and bring you real tools for clarity, healing, and hope. Today's guest is Edna White. Welcome to the show, Edna.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Such a pleasure. Why don't you start with telling us a bit about who you are and what you do?
All right. My name is Edna White, and I am a keynote speaker, an author, and a life purpose coach. I have three amazing adult kids. Throw that in, and four, now five, great grandchildren. So I'm a regular old lady.
Amazing. Amazing. Can you tell us a bit about your transformational journey? What
Okay.
was life looking like when you were struggling? Whatever
Mhm.
periods that might have been, and what does life look like right now?
Okay. I think one of my hardest times was when I was younger. I had lived through childhood sexual abuse, and um, I didn't have any help, and it was kind of compounding on me. About 17 or about 18 years old, I had had my son, um, who was a little baby at the time. He's like 8 months or so, 8 or 9 months. And I remember coming home from my friend's house, and I was just so depressed. I was like crying for like 3 days, just crying, just completely crying, and I didn't know what to do. My mom, you know, um, for whatever reason, wasn't able to help me. Maybe not willing, whatever. But she has her own story, and I was just like, I was so downtrodden, that I wanted to take my life. And I went to the train tracks near my house, and I sat on the train tracks, and I was just crying. And I had my baby. I had my baby with me, and I was going to just die. I sat on the tracks. I sat on the tracks. And I can remember just sitting there for hours, and I'm crying. I'm crying. And it's like, where, and so I didn't think of it because it seemed like a short span of time, but it would like hours, and then all of a sudden it was like darkness started to fall. And I'm like, wait a minute, where's the train? Like, it just dawned on me, where's the train? And I'm sitting there with my son still, and he's like just on my lap having a great time. He's playing and carrying on, and I'm just like, I am depressed. I'm crying the whole time, and the train never came. Well, I didn't know what that was, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even do this right. And I'm saying, to myself, I'm saying I can't even kill myself right. And so I go home, and the next day was, I think it was Sunday, and was near Christmas. And so my son wanted to see Spider-Man because he was going to be at this particular place, and he wanted to see Spider-Man. So I was like, okay. So I took him, and I took him there, and I was on the bus, and sitting on the bus. I'm still crying. There's like tears dropping from my eyes, still crying, and I just can't even get myself together. And so I remember just sitting on the bus, not doing anything, not saying anything to anybody, and the bus goes to stop, and then this lady gets off, and she puts her hand on my shoulder, and she goes, "It's going to be all right." And I didn't even look up at her, and I just shook my head because I couldn't even. If I would have opened my mouth, I probably would have like started crying louder, sobbing. And once she released my shoulder, there was a card, and so um, the card fell in my lap, and my son picked it up, and so I was like, "What do you have?" And I looked at it, and it was a therapist. It was literally a therapist number on there. And the beautiful thing about it, the woman lived 2 blocks from my house, so I could walk there. And she specialized in childhood trauma. I was completely blown away. And that started at 18. It started me to start to, working with a therapist. And I worked with a therapist for a very long time, very, very long time. It was, I think until my, even now in my 40s and 50s, you know, I worked with them. And that was one of the pivotal moments for me, learning about, you know, what was wrong with me, learning about what, you know, all those things that I was hyper vigilant about. That was, you know, sort of like a PTSD response to things, you know, being hyper vigilant about like seeing things that happen with my kids, being nervous about them, you know, that was all part of it. And learning, just learning how to not subdue them, but know, be aware of them, and just be able, okay, change the narrative around that was pinnacle for me, you know. And that started my therapy journey. Let me just say that. Yeah.
Okay, wow. So you had this moment, you were saved by the lack of trains from committing suicide, actually already having had a kid.
Yes,
You were crying, you were depressed. Um,
absolutely.
uh, Lucky to have met a therapist so early in the journey, and I
Yeah.
assume started doing that work. I'm
Yes.
curious to know, before we dive into the journey,
Mhm.
were there
Mhm.
other moments of struggle before actually
Sure.
diving into the work itself, or did they happen quite succinctly and in parallel?
No, there were more, but that was, I would say that was a pivotal moment for me. Let me just say that
Yeah.
was a pivotal moment for me to know that that therapy was there for me. Another moment was, I think when I had a car accident, and I was spiritually, it was a spiritual transformation for me. And I was coming from church and had a car accident, and it was like 6 a.m. in the morning, and it was what we had called a shut-in service before New Year's, and it's I was part of the Pentecostal Apostolic, you know, religion part, and I had been struggling with, you know, um, where God was, and you know, and my spirituality. I had spent over 28 years in a church that I didn't have those answers. And every time I asked those answers, you know, there wasn't any feedback, or it wasn't answering the spiritualism that I needed to kind of get that closeness that I wanted, because I just felt so far away, so like, you know, empty. And I was going home because I had to work that next day, and um, I saw a deer. It was like really like foggy. It was around 6 a.m. It was New Year's Eve morning. New Year's Eve morning. Yeah. And I was driving it, and I didn't see them. So I was like going 30 miles an hour, I guess. And I couldn't see them because the clouds were that thick. And by the time I saw the two of them, I hit one and then tried to swerve from the other. Then I hit another car head on. And then I ripped away from that, and I felt my wrist break. And then I whipped away from that one and then hit another car like on the side, and then ran into a utility pole where the engine of the car like came in. I could smell my flesh burning, and it sat on my hip and crushed my hip, my entire leg, and the metal of the car from the round the steering wheel pierced my lungs and punctured them. And I could, you know, feel myself, and I was frightened. I was awake for all of it. And but I remember, the most important thing I remember is that I was angry. I need an answer. I need an answer. And I was either was anger or was like thirst for something, you know, a thirst for a change, you know. And I wasn't getting it in where I was, you know, I wasn't getting it where I was. And thankfully, universally, thankfully, I crashed in the yard of a retired fireman, and I had the habit of putting my phone And you're too probably too young. I had a BlackBerry. You're probably too young for that. I had a chirp, the one of the phones that chirped back in the day. And I had that phone, and he broke the window. I remember him breaking it with his elbow. He said, "You're going to be all right." And he called the last person I called, which was my mother. And I remember being cut out of the car. I could feel it, and I could hear it, but I was like in and out of consciousness. And when I got to the hospital, I remember feeling different. And when I say different, I know that I probably was hurt, but I felt different, like totally different. And it was a long road to recovery because they gave me 20% to live. I had two broken hips, broken leg, ankle, wrist, and collapsed lungs. And my forehead was down. This was all cut. And my nose is broken. So I had a long road of recovery there. But I remember I was changed. It was different. And through all of that, it took almost 8 months for me to walk. But I defied it in 6 months. I defied it in 6 months, and I started
Wow.
walking early. And I never stopped walking after that, but it changed me exterior, from the body wise, but it gave me a closeness that I now knew God in a different way that I never knew before. It had nothing to do with the external. It was already inside. I had to know that and maybe even go that route to know that that was there. And ever since then, it's been a whirlwind of just unending opportunities for growth and higher self, especially around my emotions, emotional wellness, my mental wellness, all of that. So that was the
Wow.
first breaking point for all of that. Yeah.
That sounds like a really powerful life experience, and
Yeah.
I'm glad you were able to survive and things aligned and you
Yeah.
recovered so fast as well. It's
Yes.
incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So of all these challenges that you've mentioned
Mhm.
now, what does life look like now compared to before?
Well,
Sounds like a breath of fresh
it
air.
it really does. I'm thankful for all of them. I say that they all brought something special in my life. Like that experience alone was one of the best days in my spiritual life. I will say that. And it would challenge my body as well. I had to eat better, you know, eat better all the time. I had to do things differently. But it changed me for the better because now I'm using my inward um, messages more than I was using the exterior, all that noise that, excuse me, all the noise that we're hearing. I'm now using internal compasses and internal guidance versus, let me ask you a question about this. I was always being guided by somebody else because I never trusted myself. So now I'm trusting myself even more, taking myself to higher realms. And I'm actually okay with being by myself for the first time in many, many, many years, many years. And like I always say, I have a new fondness for empty nesters. I tell empty nesters, this is the time to get it all lined up. you know, so I feel much lighter. I can think clearly, make decisions that have to do with longevity versus short term, and most of all being in the moment. Like I just said to you earlier, I'm thinking about tomorrow, but I got to get back to the moment. I got to get right into the moment. So living in the moment is so important to me.
Yeah, incredible. To how would you differentiate living in the moment from seeing or understanding your body's internal signals, and maybe even from spirituality.
Sure.
Perhaps all these three are related in some ways, or maybe two of them are and one is not so much, but I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on that.
So the moment is for our thoughts, our thoughts of where, okay, what are we going to do tomorrow? What are we going to do in the next minute? Or what are we going to have for lunch? It's bringing those thoughts into, okay, what you doing in this space right now? Are you embracing the space? And I'll tell you to for about 8 months. After all of this. And I lived there for about 8 months teaching English as a second language. The most moment feel moment that I had was walking the wall of China. That's what it was. That I embraced every step because I was just learning, I was just getting back into walking. So can you imagine? I am just in a year in, just a year in or two, and I'm trying to stabilize myself. But I was in the moment learning about everything on this wall from one era to the next. So that really started me into the moment by moment. So I can tell you literally, if you ask me, do you remember if you took me back? Do you remember this moment? Yeah, so and so did this and that, and I stay in the moment, right? I stay in that moment because I have a great memory about being in that moment. You know, Many of us forget. Yes, bad things happen. You probably have to forget in order to help yourself. But when you're in the moment, and there's something good going on. Many people forget. Like, oh, it was a birthday. Do you remember when Ellen walked in with a pink dress on? No, because most of the time you're in the next thing, the next phase of things. You're not absorbing what's happening. That's why memory is so important. It's memory because when we don't remember, we're not in the moment. Now, when it comes to our inner voice, right? It's aligning with the because the heart is the part that tells us everything. It's not really the mind that tells us everything. That protects us, It protects us, but it's the heart that we feel with. That's the center of the emotions. That it actually feels the vibrations. You know, like a child laying on its mother's breast can hear the heartbeat, knows the difference, even if their eyes closed, if they're with someone different, because the heartbeat, the vibration. So listening to that center of yourself and your intuition, those two things will always speak the loudest but the softest. But you have to be able to hear
Mm,
it.
yeah,
You have to be able to hear it. And hearing it means getting rid of the noise.
yeah,
And in a time that we're in right now, everything is fast paced because we're scrolling, we're reading, we're watching, everything's moving, and then there's things that are happening, in the world that can impact us. So we're worry is everywhere, right?
yeah.
But when you can turn that noise off and listen, what's good for me? Okay, what's good? And then be aware of that. And then now coming into your spiritualism, because I truly do believe, and here's my concept, and I don't want to run over you or past you if you're going to ask me that question, but emotional intelligence and mastering your emotions have brought me to different levels, where I never thought I would be. And when I mean different levels, I mean to my higher self, because I can see, pictures of me behaving very badly, because of maybe the trauma, because of maybe the noise that I've heard, or been things that impacted me, through the years. I behave badly, but now my response is differently. It's more calmer. It's leaning towards that trust, both in yourself and in the spiritual guides that are here.
Incredible. So I'm curious to know how in your journey did you make the transition to valuing more that intuition and those internal body-based signals over the external or the mind, for example.
Right. Yeah. Well, through the years, I think um, being in solitude and for like I told you about the empty nester, I moved to this apartment and I was, used to my kids and my grandkids being around all the time because we are in one house, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm all alone here, right? And the noise had stopped. So what had happened with me is that when the noise stopped, I was hearing everything that everybody told me. They told me that I was no good, I was ugly, I was this, I was that, I'll never be anything. I heard it all. And that's when I knew that I had to do something because that's what I was really hearing. And that's why I never wanted to be by myself because I was hearing all of this. So I'm going to say right after I had the car accident, it was more, getting back to walking. But I want to say 7 to 10 years ago, that's when I started to realize, hey, this is not good. I'm hearing and I'm repeating and I'm believing what everyone said. And so I was one to change my hair. Every season came, there was a new hairstyle. I had a best bud who worked for Sassoon and she had her own, hair business. So she was always cutting hair and she came out with new hairstyles. Like, do it on me. And what that showed me in that time is that I really didn't know who I was because I wasn't comfortable with anything. And even a tree, even though they get rid of their leaves, the next year it comes back, they're the same leaves. They're not no different leaves. They're the same leaves, same type of leaves. I was shedding my hair and it was a different hairdo every day. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know if I was a pear tree or apple tree or orange tree. I had no idea. And one day, hearing all those voices, and I said, what do I believe I am? Who do I believe I am? And that question pierced my soul. And I said out loud, I don't know who I am. I have
Wow.
no idea. Because I was buried under all of the stuff. People told me who I was, even good stuff. They told me, oh, you're an evangelist. You're this. You're going to do that. You're going to do this. You must do this. I was under all of that all these years in my 40s and 50s. All those years, I was still under that stuff. So it took me stripping away. And what I did was, like your haircut now, I told my nephew, I said, come over and give me a number one. So he was thinking, oh, he's a hairdresser as well. So he's thinking, oh, she's going to get a new do. So we're going to do her hair. Comes over and he says, show me the picture. I said, oh no, I meant the number one on a buzzer. He's like, a number one? I said, yeah, let's go. And and it was the first time I cut my hair off. I really looked in the mirror and start to uncover who I really was. So that started my natural hair growth journey. And not to say I had to cut it off again but I had to do that because it was full of chemicals. So I had to. It was the release that I needed to start again, to not listen to those voices. So I started. It took me almost 10 years to kind of be honest with myself, be trust myself that I know the answer and the answer's inside of me. I know the answer. I am worth. I'm not worthy. I'm worth. You know, that's why I should be walking in confidence. Even though things may not look great, I'm not looking at the noise. I'm embodying the worth.
Wow, it's really powerful how these moments sometimes, and particularly rituals with our looks and connecting that with our identity, can have
Yes.
so much impact. on us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You mentioned a little bit earlier that some of the work that you do is around helping people with their purpose. I'm curious to know
Yes.
what that journey was like for you. I assume there's a relation to that moment of
Yes.
realizing you don't know who you are. So from
Right.
yeah, what did it unfold for you?
Well, I knew, that other people, and I had started out working with those who had experienced childhood trauma, because what I experienced was that I had to have this face on all the time, like in front of, because I lived, my parent never gave up my predator, never he took his side over mine. So I had to smile, pretend like I was happy, pretend that I loved them, because I didn't. And I could look back and say that now I didn't. I said it, but it was a thing. It was just, okay, I have to do this. And I was buried underneath all of those, the lies. I was buried under all the deceit. I was buried under the shame. People talk about you're ashamed. I said, no, 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 it's not only shame. It's the lies that we told ourselves, that this was good, this picture looks great, and we didn't go with our truth and say, no, this is not good, and separate ourselves from that. And it's okay to separate ourselves from that. That's part of it. But you're ashamed about maybe doing something because you don't have the nerve to, because you think somebody's going to say something about you. But in helping, those people in general, having those support groups and having, listening to them, their stories sounded like mine, just a different instance. Our stories sounded the same, but here we are stuck again. Just like I told you, I started therapy at 18. I still was stuck. Even with the tools, I didn't know. I got them, but I had to live through them to use them. I had no experience to use them. So yeah, I had to make some mistakes along the way, but and still use the tools. So many of those that I worked with didn't have any tools. I was their first encounter of a tool, and they were stuck as adults in their 50s and 60s. They were stuck.
Yeah,
So learning, giving them my experience, because as I heard their story, our stories are so the same. And this is where you are. It's not just you having the shame, it's the lies on top of that. Because you learn to lie, you learn to lie. You learn to lie. This is great. We're the Brady Bunch, and behind the scenes, it's utter chaos. It's utter chaos. And you come out the house with this face on, and you've been coding and pretending for years, and it's not easy to take those masks off. It's very difficult. So that's how it started. My transition started happening with everyone, and every time I tell my story, I heal a lot more. Every time they hear my story, they heal a lot more. When they tell their story, they heal a lot more. It's that ecosystem of the story, ecosystem that if I'm here and I'm, at the level you used to be at, I know that I can get there because now I hear your story. All of us at different levels. And if we want to get there, we can. So I help get them unstuck. And the amazing thing is, people say I made mistakes. I said, no, you just made a decision. That's it. The decision didn't work out. The response is, now, what are you going to do with that? And how do you navigate through life doing it? And it helps them to see, yeah, this is, you're right, just a decision.
yeah,
Maybe some people might not like it. Maybe you like it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe not. Maybe it didn't come out right. Not mistake, but it didn't come out right the way you wanted to come out right. Okay, maybe it didn't happen that way, but I can make a decision right now that I don't want it to be that way any longer.
yeah. We can always
Yeah, we
learn
always.
from our
Yeah.
experiences. And
Right.
I think that I agree that I have a philosophy that there's no such thing as mistakes, only feedback,
Nope.
and it's
Yep.
all
Oh, that's a good one too.
building us towards the highest level of us that we're
Yes.
gonna be. So I'm
Absolutely.
curious to go back more into your journey with the therapist. I mean, you were
Mhm.
just 18 or so when you encountered the
Yep.
therapist.
Mhm.
I'm curious to know how that journey was like for you. How did it become so valuable so quickly
Yeah.
and in such a
Right.
way that you were continuing this work until present day? And also I'm curious to know if there were other tools, modalities, or learnings that you have encountered along the way between then and today.
Sure. Sure. I think the um the therapy was so good for me because I was an emotional mess. I had no emotional regulation. And when you are not safe and when you feel these things, you're supposed to feel them. But I had no emotional regulation whatsoever. I was an emotional mess, a mess. So when your emotions, it's not emotions is nothing but, you know, energy and motion within your body, right? And so it may feel like a signal, like for me with the relationships, it felt like a if somebody just said hi to me, I thought they liked me, right? But they were just like probably playing me all along. I didn't get the message like that. Oh, they like me. And then it ended up, I then had to, I was in a relationship with him and it was the wrong relationship, right? It wasn't coming out right because of the emotional. And it was very important to me to learn how to regulate my emotions because I didn't know that I had so many. Only two that I knew about was sadness and happiness. Didn't know I had that many. I know they all come from love or fear, but I didn't know I had that many. So I had no regulation on anything. So that's why it worked so it started to take effect so well because I thought I was going insane, insane that I was talking to the person that was a perpetrator, right? And but it was just a survival skill. It was just survival. I was in the atmosphere that I mean in the situation it was just a survival skill. It wasn't nothing towards how I was really feeling. It was just survival skill. So I had to learn how to take those things apart, right? And it helped me, yet I was not clear as I got older on how to utilize it. Now, I forgot to tell you, in between there, I joined a church. And that played a big part in me kind of disengaging from the therapy because they didn't believe in therapy. And so they said, oh, lay this at the altar, give it to God. And I'm like, okay, but it doesn't feel like it's given to God. What is happening here? And I started to utilize what they were telling me, but it was all wrong. It just made things worse. So I was in a 28-year crisis of breakdown and never knew it until I broke down. And not until then, like I was at the hospital, did I
Was that the
was
accident,
able,
that
yes, it was the
moment?
accident.
Yeah.
That after 28 years when I was kept saying I need to know answers and they couldn't give me answers, and there's more out there and I'm saying that and there's more and they're telling me no and this is what you're supposed to be doing. I was imploding. I felt like I was going to explode. I promise you, I felt that's how I felt. And I was like, I can't, like this I felt like I was not lost, but I really felt like I was gonna implode. I had so much information, so much that I wanted to learn, know, and that was a transition for me. And not until I had the accident did it kind of open up. It's like an egg, like it broke the shell. It really was like an egg that broke the shell, and I could now feel that. Okay, this is not supposed to be like that. And I could say, and I was able to say no more. I was able to I don't want it anymore. So I was able to walk away and stay away. Um, so that was that time. And then once I got out of the hospital, I continued my therapy with all the other therapies I had to
Yeah.
do. I continued that. So I
Yeah.
continued therapy.
It
Yeah.
sounds
And
like
that was my
at some point the spirituality and the therapy inner work were kind of clashing
right,
against each other, and that
right,
accident and coming out of the hospital kind of helped you reintegrate and harmonize the two
right,
back into your life.
right. Well, I'm gonna say it while I was in the religion, I had no spirituality. I didn't have that. I
Right.
had servitude versus spirituality. I didn't
Okay,
have
so
that.
it
I
catalyzed something
yeah,
else for you. Yeah,
right.
curious to know um well, there's two equally important questions that pop into my mind.
Yeah.
Let me start with this one. Imagine a listener um
Mhm.
is stuck and
Right.
might be held back by some trauma and emotions, but this person does not believe that they need therapy or doesn't see the
Right.
value in it.
Right.
What would
Right.
be your message to this audience?
Well, I would say that if what you're thinking, let's just say it's that very thought, I don't need that. And if that is bringing you angst, or if it's bringing you, if it's hard to do, I mean, like, let's just say if it is something, whatever you're doing, if it's hard, it's always hard to do, and it's always a struggle to do, right? Always. You need another modality. Another modality to it. So for me, nothing seemed to solve the problem. Nothing. And I've tried a whole lot, okay? And nothing seemed to make me satisfied or make me happy. Close that hole, because when you go through trauma, it's like being stabbed in the heart. There's a hole. So no matter what, you can reach for people, places, and things, and you still feel like there's something missing. If you feel that, you're stuck. If you have the best job in the world, if you're what you always wanted to be, I don't know, a singer, whatever, and you still not happy, it's time to get therapy. It's the unhappiness. It's the, you know, you're still in that same position. If you're still doing the same thing you did a year ago, even an hour ago, you're stuck. And it's time for therapy. And don't be ashamed to do it. You ain't got to tell the whole world you're doing it. But I'm trying to tell you, when you do, you're going to tell the whole world you're doing it. Because it changes how you feel. And this one thing I will tell you, when I went to therapy, started going in my 50s, and I went back because I was triggered by something that I thought I had kind of cleaned up. And let you know, you're always going to need to clean something up inside, because with that much trauma, with things that are going on, it's a great thing to invest in your life, right? So I go to her, and I'm sitting there, and so I'm having this whole thing, and one thing she said to me, "How are you?" And I just started in, right? Started in what was going on with me, and the hour was over, and I thought to myself, I said, you know what? This is the only place that I can come to that I don't have to care about how you feel. You care about how I feel. And that's what I would tell you. The person cares how you feel. Go there, because even if you don't feel anything, you go there and you can start to be it, because it's like a bottle with a top on it tied tight. All that stuff in there is all it's going to do is keep polluting and polluting. So give yourself that, invest in yourself. Think of it as a doctor's visit, you know?
Yeah,
Take care of something, you know?
take care of your emotional health. And
Exactly.
particularly when you are not aware. of what
Mhm.
emotions are going through you, even more of
Right,
a reason. If you're thinking, I mean, correct me if I'm
right,
wrong, but if you're thinking, I don't have emotions, I don't feel them, or if I do, then I don't really know what they are.
right, right.
Even more of a reason to kind of unpack where that
Yes,
comes from.
absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely. And it could be cultural. It could be cultural, you know. It could be, you know, because I lived in China and I they had, you know, they I had to teach them about emotions. I was like, really? Like, you know, and they were like, yeah, you're because I'm theatrical. I make faces and things like that, you know. And they were like, how do you feel that, you know? And they would say something, and I was like, when you say sunshine, I'm not interested. You know, because if I was somebody that didn't know what sunshine was and you say sunshine and with no emotion whatever, but when I say sunshine, sunshine, it's vibrant, you know, I got the whole thing going on, you know? And if you don't have those emotions, there's a reason why. And they're important because they have to go somewhere, okay? They have
yeah,
to reside somewhere. And when they go to reside and stay and get stuck there, just like you get stuck, they go to a part of your body, if not all of your body, and sit there and they can become dis-ease. And dis-ease can be so many uncomfortable you know, conditions and can be cancer. So you
yeah.
want to be able, you came here with those emotions. You know, you came here to smile. You came here to be happy, to be sad, to cry sometimes, to feel all those things, but under some type of control.
Yeah, wow. Thank you for sharing that. I must say it
Mhm.
was a big revolution in my mental well-being journey when
Yeah,
I discovered the importance of emotions
yeah,
and the link with trauma
yeah.
and how much of our diseases or symptoms or addictions or mental health
Yes,
issues are partly, if not wholly, caused by trauma, even if we're
yeah,
not aware of it.
that's right.
So, tell us a bit more about what you do these days. How do you help people get unstuck? What kind of things do they come in with, and what does that process look like?
So a lot of people they usually come in, and it's surprising. I focus my energy on 40s to 60s and sometimes 50s to 60s, but I usually get younger people. I guess because my message is, you know, just so you know, there. And so when they come in, they're usually stuck. A lot of young people are stuck in careers, and they come and say, "Well, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm in this position here, and I don't like it." And so we don't talk about the position at all. We talk about their mindset. Well, why would you do that? And then we come to find out, well, mom said this, and then all of the other stuff starts spewing out. And I said, oh, so you took on this whole career for these 4 years until you were 23, so you can kind of leave and go away and do what you want to do now because now you satisfied your mother's goal or your father's goal or their request. And I said, now, and I, you know, I'm pretty kind of like raw. I was like, oh, so you lived a lie, right? You pretended a whole lot, and you became your parent. And they're like, well, if you put it that way, yeah. So we talk about that stuff versus, you know, what career changes. And then once all of that stuff is out, then they can feel their heart again and say, this is what I want to do. This, and they can come up with a plan. They can say, this is how I can approach this. So I know Joe, who might be able to get me in touch with Disney because I forgot about him before because you were doing stuff that was not part of your alignment. You're out of alignment because
Wow.
you're trying to align with your parent. You know what your parent wanted because a lot of times they live through their children vicariously. You know they want for them what they could have done, you know, a lot of times. or what they think is the best choice for them, but they don't see them as an individual and say, Joe would be a great musician because he can sing. Maybe he wants to do that. Do you want to sing? I've never heard the question, what do you want to do with your life? And I've never heard the answer, if I wanted to be a fireman. Well, you know what you need to do? Here's the options. Pop, 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 pop. Never heard that either. That's a type of support, you know? And so we dig into that. We dig into those things. We even go back as far as, what did you want to do when you were a little kid? 5 years old, what did you want to do? 9 years old, what did you want to do? And kind of navigate that into what they can do and what they have experience at, and kind of put it all together. Hey, this is what you could do. Wow. And you have experience over here, you could do that, and if they want to, either have a career, and once that's kind of solidified, the ideas, the creativity happens. When we're talking about someone in the 50s and 60s, they have now moved on out of work. What's my purpose? And people think they have to find it. They don't have to find it. It's like, oh, you have to remember, because all the other stuff that you've done is on top of it. And I said, your purpose is not what you do, it's what you do for other people that make them feel good. That's what your purpose is. Like, oh, so you've been doing it for somebody else, but you've been doing it. You just didn't realize you were doing it. So if you were in human resources, people always came to you, right? And not to the other, rep there. There's something that you had that they needed. And you were performing in your purpose, and people were getting it, but not to the full extent. So you were misaligned for a little while, but then when you do it as you are now, or any platform that you, like what I'm doing now is um I always wondered what I'm supposed to be doing and how I'm supposed to do it. And I think you would know this too. You experience, okay, this specialist said this expert said this guru said this, and you're trying to, like, what do I do? What do I do? Right. And I went through that for a time, and I was like, wait, hold up, what do I do great that I don't have to, I know I could do this. And then once I lined up what I know what I can do, it goes back to that question, who am I? And you have to address yourself like that. Who am I right now? Because you change all the time. So once you're in your 50s and 60s, okay, now who am I now? What am I doing with this big old resume? What am I doing? And I call it the bishop stage. So at that age, it's the bishop stage. You know, if you have made so much money that you don't have to do work at all, so maybe you want to volunteer somewhere and give back that knowledge to the next legacy, to make it legacy to someone else, right? Or to something else, right? You're giving that as a legacy. And if you have to work, or you would like to work in your 50s, 60s, we take whatever you know and make it so, that it lines up, that you do what you want, sort of like the soft life, a couple hours and you still are making amazing money. But it goes back to, what are you believing that you can do?
Yeah, that's a huge area within itself, belief.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I love that you point to one of the most fundamental questions of who am I?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of overlaps between the idea of purpose and
Right.
spirituality as well. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm curious to learn more about what your thoughts are on spirituality and how it can help people get unstuck.
Okay. Well, that's the inner peace that you have. That's most of the world. I don't know the percentage, believe peace is external. It's all around them. So, like, if somebody's bothering you, you're not giving me any peace. They're not supposed to. The peace comes from you. We think that peace is tangible. It's not. It's an actionable practice rooted in your own psychological health. So if you are all over the place, right? Like being busy is a sign to me. Being busy is a sign to me that you're psychologically all over the place. You just your hands are you got more arms than an octopus. It's everything. That's a psychological issue. There is no peace there. It's that your psychological health is in jeopardy. So peace is an inner thing, right? It's a place you go. And I'm going to give you what I think it looks like, and this is how I look at it. And you're probably too young. I'm just assuming, but there was a game back when I was a young girl, and so we all stand around a circle. We sing this song, and I can't remember the song to save my life, but I remember the action. So we just all stand in a circle, and then they'd go pick your best friend, and so you pick your best friend or a friend that you know that would stand in back of you. So if you fall, they catch you, right? So you pick a friend, and they don't know when you're going to fall. You just fall back. Peace is like that, to allow the universe, to allow the trust and confidence in you within that universe to fall back and be caught, not worrying about what's going to happen if they're going to catch you. Just fall back. That's what peace is to me. There's no no expectation of what it looks like or feels like or tastes like or smells like. It's just you just allowing, and you're trusting. And when you trust like that, you start to examine your core belief. Do I really have faith? Am I really living in fear, or am I living in faith? You know, those, because sometimes we practice faith,
Yeah.
but we don't live it. We practice it outward, but we don't live it. So when things are, and it happened for me, when things are don't look like they should be, and we have life, you know. Spiritualism does not stop you from having life, things that happen in life. So just so you know, okay, it doesn't stop you from doing that. But what it does is allows you to have more faith, real faith. And when I'm talking about trust in yourself, trust in the universe, trust in, the spirit beings being around you, trusting in your higher self, all those trusting factors in a higher realm. Okay. And that's what I believe that spiritualism is. It's getting to that higher level. It's, going above and beyond just, seeing if everything is good here. And that's aligning and making sure that everything is open. Everything is open. Everything's open. And if it's not, you do the checking. Don't let anybody check you. But peace is that the actionable practice that's rooted for me in your psychological health.
Beautiful. And that is something that can be cultivated with
Yes.
work and healing and all of this
That's
self-inquiry,
right.
examination. And
Yes.
so
That's
it's achievable. It just takes a little bit of
yes.
time.
That's right.
That's amazing. I love this perspective of spiritualism as emotional
Yeah.
wellness and a well-regulated nervous system and achieving peace in a
Yes.
more
Yes.
constant way. It reminds me a lot of what Buddhists teach with them through meditation, but this
Hmm.
through
Yes.
a different path. And
Yes.
it's absolutely fair. as we wind down towards the end of our conversation, I'd love to
Mhm.
invite you to share anything that you might have not mentioned before that you really want to make sure that we get in on this conversation.
Um, just remember that, healing is continuous, that you're never healed until you leave here. And then we don't even know that, but take healing, the word heal, and just continue that, integrate it and make it a forward motion. Um, and not let your past, even yesterday, even an hour ago, dictate where you are at this moment, but consciously choose to build the next chapter of your life. Just consciously do that.
That's a beautiful, yeah, philosophy and
Yeah.
practical tool. I really love the piece about integration because
Yes.
it is about kind of how do we say understanding our whole self
Yeah.
and embracing all of who we
Yeah.
are and what we are because there's nothing else that it could be.
Yeah.
And when we make peace with that, when we integrate, we can love ourselves more
Yeah.
fully and also improve the experience that we're
Yeah.
having in this mind and
Yeah.
body.
That's right.
So
But I want to say, don't say understanding, say remember.
remembering, yeah, fair.
Yeah. Remembering. Yeah. Remembering.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Edna.
You.
Your biography and any relevant links will be posted in the episode show notes.
Okay.
If anyone would like to get in touch with you, what would be the next step?
Just contact me on ednawhite.com. That's it.
Super simple. Awesome. Well, Edna, thank you so much for sharing your inspiring story as well as
Thank
those
you.
practical tools to really make a difference.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate you.
Such a pleasure.